Hello everyone! Wow. It has been a hot minute since I have uploaded a YouTube video you may or may not have noticed, but we're back, we're doing it. Today we are doing a review and demo of the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r Soft Matte Longwear Foundation. Quite the name. So I actually am refilming this because, okay, here's the story. First of all, it took me forever to figure out how I felt about this foundation, and you'll see why when we get into the caveats section of the video. But then once I figured it out and finally sat down and filmed it, I was super unhappy with the way that it turned out because I just felt like my thoughts, since they were so mixed already, the information came out mixed up and confusing. And so then I just was like avoiding editing it because I knew that it was confusing. So I've let all my thoughts percolate over the last couple of weeks, and now I think I've come up with the clearest way to present my very mixed thoughts to you all in a way that makes sense and will be easy to follow, hopefully. So first we're going to talk about what it is and what it claims to do. Then I'm going to tell you what I love about it. Then we're going to talk about all the caveats to that, which there are a lot. And then at the end of the video, I will show myself applying the foundation and a couple of clips of how it wore throughout the day, as well as swatch comparisons to some other foundations that I own. How does that sound? I think it sounds great. No one's here to tell me otherwise, so let's get into it. So just so we're all on the same page and y'all know where I'm coming from, I have hella oily, acne-prone skin, so that's the perspective I'm going to be reviewing this foundation from, just so you know. So this foundation claims to be a medium coverage foundation for all skin types. It says it will give you an instantly smooth, pore diffused, shine-free finish that easily builds from medium to full coverage. It's an oil-free formula, resistant to sweat, humidity, and won't clog your pores. And as the name suggests, it claims to be long-wearing with a light-as-air texture that's undetectable on the skin. So basically Rihanna has said that she just wants this foundation to make it look like you have good skin. Really good skin. It retails for $34 at Sephora, which actually puts it at one of the less expensive options at Sephora. Most foundations there are closer to the $40 range, and you do get your standard 1 fluid ounce. So the other big thing to note with this foundation, and a large part of why it was so hyped up, is that it launched with 40 shades. Now, this is definitely not the first brand to have such a large shade range, like Makeup Forever, Cover FX, a few other luxury brands, all have really huge shade ranges, but I think two things played into the hype here. One is that it's a brand new brand and a brand new foundation. So I think the norm that people are used to is launching with a more limited shade range and then expanding later, and Fenty Beauty just did it right out the gate. Side note, Fenty Beauty is Rihanna's beauty line that came out in 2017, and Fenty is Rihanna's last name. Back to the foundation. I think the other thing that contributed to the hype is that she came out with really unique, real undertones. Even lines that have a lot of shades usually just have warm, neutral, and cool. But really, there's a lot more undertones out there in the world. I think the only other brand that I personally know of that actually addresses more undertones than just warm, neutral, and cool is Anastasia Beverly Hills. And it's really interesting, if you read through the undertones on the Fenty foundation shade descriptions, she lists everything from cool to neutral to warm to peach, olive, yellow, pink, red, cool red, neutral peach, subtle olive, very warm. Like, the list goes on and on and on, and I think that is one of the big things about this shade range that got it so much attention, is just it's very, very well thought out. Alright, let's go back to the claims and just kind of go through them, and I will tell you if I agree or disagree with the things that it claims, and then I'll talk about specifically what I love about this product. So, the claims. Medium coverage? Yes, 100%. All skin types? I have a hard time seeing how this foundation could work on dry skin because it even makes me feel a little teensy tiny bit dried out. So it's hard for me to imagine someone with dry skin enjoying this foundation. And based on most of the reviews I've seen, most people with dry skin don't like this foundation. But I have seen some people who do. So if you have dry skin, I would just recommend testing it out for yourself, I guess. I can only speak for oily skin. All right, smooth, pore diffused, shine free. Yes, 100% agree. Buildable to full coverage. No. I'm gonna have to stop you right there. No. If all you have is redness, you probably will think this is full coverage. If you have any acne spots or scars, I'm sorry, this is not full coverage, and you cannot even build it up to be full coverage. I can't get this to build to full coverage no matter what I do. I also don't think it's buildable, period, but we'll get to that later when I talk about the application. So, long wearing. This is decently long wearing, and it does fade gracefully. It doesn't like break up or anything, but I definitely have more long wearing foundations that can last through anything, like the Revlon Color Stay. So do I think it wears well? Yes. Enough to label it as a long wear foundation? No. Like, will it last you through a workday? Yes. Will it be fine through an outdoor all-day music festival? No. Sweat and humidity resistant. I honestly really can't comment on this because I've only been testing it out in the winter, so I just don't know. Sorry. Won't clog pores. I am happy to report that this foundation is one of the few that has not seemed to break me out at all. Light as air texture that's undetectable on the skin. Yes, if you apply this foundation correctly, it is absolutely undetectable, light as air. You can't feel it. That's actually the perfect segue into the section on what I love about this foundation. So if you apply this foundation properly, it does exactly what Rihanna said it will. It just looks like you've got amazing skin. You seriously cannot see it on your skin, and you also can't feel it. I think the best way that I could describe this foundation is that it just makes your skin look like butter. It just makes it look so smooth, but in the most natural way ever. I cannot emphasize enough how good my skin looks when I wear this foundation. It's matte, but somehow healthy looking. Like, honestly, it kind of really looks like butter. Like, you know how butter isn't shiny, but it also, you look at it and you're like, wow, that thing is not dry. That looks nice and plump and healthy, but it's not shiny at all. I wouldn't even call it a satin finish. It's matte. It looks like butter. Your skin will look like butter. And you seriously cannot see it on your skin. I can get up super close to a mirror and I cannot see the actual foundation. It just looks like my skin, my buttery, buttery skin. The other thing that I love about this foundation is it's one of the best oil controlling foundations I've ever used. I would actually say it's maybe like second after the Revlon Color Stay as far as controlling my oils throughout the day. The Color Stay, while it is more oil controlling and long lasting, it doesn't smooth your skin out as much, and it does look more makeup-y. Like, you can see the foundation on your skin. So just side note about a comparison with the Revlon Color Stay, I guess. Also, I really, really like that the Fenty foundation dries down to a powder finish. Like, I don't have to powder my face before going in with blush, bronzer, highlight. And day to day, I'm the type of person that likes quick makeup. I don't really set my whole face with powder on the day-to-day basis, or I like to not have to. Sometimes I have to be able to blend things on top of it, but I like to be able to avoid it. And I also wanted to say that I am in love with the packaging, and that is something that does matter to me. A lot of people will say packaging doesn't matter. Here on my channel, it does, because it's part of the experience of using a product. I love the tall frosted glass bottle with the white lid and the pump and the minimal writing on it. It's just so classy and sleek and beautiful. And then lastly, it's cruelty free. The whole brand is, so that's another plus for this foundation. So you're probably thinking, wow, why are your thoughts so mixed? A cruelty-free foundation that makes your skin look bomb and also controls your oils and comes in an amazing shade range? What could be bad about that? Well, my friends, let's begin. So you may have heard me mention a few times throughout the video that if you apply the foundation properly, it will look like all of these buttery things. We're going to talk about that application right now. In my opinion, you have two options to apply this foundation, and nothing else works. You either have to buy the brush she sells with it, or use something similar, which it's a very unique brush, so I don't know what that similar thing would be. or use a beauty blender, but just know that it's going to eat up a lot of product because this is a straight up liquid foundation. It's basically like a water foundation, like the Makeup Forever Face and Body, but with pigment. Your beauty blender is just going to eat up all the foundation. This foundation dries so quickly that I find you can't buff or even stipple it in with like a kabuki brush or a blending brush or anything. It just doesn't work. Normally, I would never even think of purchasing a brush that's sold with a foundation, but in this case, I think it is kind of necessary. And when you watch makeup artists on the Fenty Instagram page apply this foundation, they always swipe it on with the brush and then leave it. And that is key. You cannot go back in and blend this foundation or it'll get patchy and weird. You just have to swipe it on in long strokes and then leave it. And personally, I think this brush that she sells with it is unique and not like any other brush I've seen before because it's like a paddle brush, but it's thick enough to not leave any streaks. I really love it for other foundations too. I really truly love this brush. And once I started applying the Fenty foundation with this brush the correct way with the long strokes, it was a game changer and I fell in love with the foundation. Before that, I was like, this is patchy and terrible and the worst foundation ever. Why do people like this? Applied it the correct way, in love. Like I said, you can also use a beauty blender and I think it does look good that way too. But honestly, you're probably going to save money in the long run by buying the brush and not just losing all of your product in a sponge. All right, caveat number 2 to this foundation. Even if you use a brush, you still kind of have to use a lot of product. This is not one of those little bit goes a long way like the Milk foundation or the Marc Jacobs Remarkable. I have to use 2 to 3 pumps and I'm normally a 1 to 2 pumps kind of gal. Point number 3, it is imperative that you use some kind of a moisturizing primer with this foundation. No matter what your skin type, this one will not look good. It will not look like butter unless you have primed with something moisturizing. I usually only prime with the Smashbox Photo Finish Primer Water. Like I moisturize and then I prime with the primer water, but that's not enough for this one. You have to use a moisturizing primer. Say it with me. We have to use a moisturizing primer. If you don't, it will look dry and it will sink into your pores really weirdly. Like they will look like little dots. It's the weirdest, strangest thing. Nala agrees. Point number 4, it sinks into my smile lines worse than any other foundation that I own. Now, I've not heard of this being a common problem, but I did want to note it because it's happened every single time I've worn it. So just know that. Point number 5, it dries down quite a bit darker than it is in the bottle, so finding your shades just like a little bit trickier than usual. So just make sure when you're swatching them in Sephora, if you are, that you wait until it has fully dried down before making your shade selection. Trust me on that one. Point number 6, you cannot use cream products over this foundation because it dries to a powder finish. I find that cream products are very difficult to blend over top of it. Again, not a huge deal, but as someone who enjoys a good cream bronzer, I basically just can't use them if I'm wearing this foundation. Point number 7, it's medium coverage. Now, if you're someone with relatively good skin, this doesn't apply to you, and this might be a pro, but I need to note that I do not find this foundation to be buildable like it claims to be. Because it dries so quickly, you cannot blend on top of it, or it's essentially like putting a cream over a powder. It starts to move the foundation underneath, and things get patchy and crusty and weird, and it's just not pretty. And in the application clip, you'll see me trying to build it up on one of the sides of my face by working super, super quickly, like I try and go in before it has dried, but it's still, even with 2 or even 3 layers, it doesn't cover all the dark spots. So I don't think that it can be built to full coverage, personally. I still wear it and just spot conceal, but I just have to note that I don't find it to be buildable to full coverage. And caveat number 8, it is scented pretty heavily. Now this could go under a pro or a con depending on if you like the scent, but I wanted to include it here because I know fragrance in general is just like not good for your skin, so I kind of just wish they had left it out. I don't mind the smell at all, personally. It's just like a powdery, but somehow not in a grandma way type of scent, but personally, no scent at all would be better. Alright, ladies and gents, to wrap this all up and then get into the demo and swatches, I'll conclude by saying if you do all the right things and apply this foundation properly, it is one of the best I have ever used, especially for oily skin. If you don't, you will most likely hate it. It's a finicky little guy, but once you know what to do, it's not any harder than any other foundation to work with other than, you know, buying the brush. And since I already figured all that out for you guys, you're already halfway there. And it seriously does just look like you have amazing skin when you wear this. So despite all 8 caveats, I will still say that this one is a winner in my book. I would love to know all your thoughts below in the comment section. Now let's get into the demo. I am wearing shade 130, which is a very yellow shade, but I love it. It actually does look a little too yellow on camera, but that's because the camera tries to balance things and then ends up exaggerating colors and darkness and lightness. So trust me when I say this foundation matches my skin almost perfectly. I'm so in love with the shade. It's great. I'll be quiet now and just let you watch because you know all my thoughts at this point. I did decide that some of this is worth explaining. So as you can see, I am going in with the strokes like I talked about, but then whenever I do need to blend out an area that has already dried, I use this like patting motion with the brush if there is like a harsh line or something like that that needs blended out. And then if it ever looks like I'm swiping over an area more than once, you can swipe over it like twice until it dries down, and then any other swipes that I'm doing are just extremely light pressure just to like eliminate any brush strokes. And then as you can see on this side, initially I went in with a really light layer and I was like, oops, I definitely need more. So I quickly went in with a second layer and I'm just blending out all the edges, but the main area where I applied the product, I'm not going back over it. And if I do, it's so lightly, like I said, just to get rid of brush strokes. So as you can see, it's not covering my spots like at all. It's definitely toning them down. It's gotten rid of all my redness, but it's not getting rid of the spots. And you can see super, super up close, it just looks like my skin. It does not look like there's foundation sitting on it. This is just a few minutes later. I took off my black sweatshirt because it was throwing the color off, and I just really wanted you to see up close. Now, normally I would go in and spot conceal those big pimples, but I didn't for the sake of the video. But as you can see now that I've got like bronzer and blush on, it looks so natural, but not full coverage. And trust me, I've tried building this up with layers and layers and layers, and I can never get it to cover those spots. I did also want to show that little smile line I was talking about is already starting, and then I'm showing you my arms so I can prove that the foundation matches my skin tone, like I said it did. And then this is a clip from 4 hours into the wear, and it doesn't really change from 4 hours on to like 8 or 12 hours, but I wanted to show you, since I don't put foundation on my nose, you can see just how oily my skin is and how well the foundation is controlling the oil. And then that smile line is real bad. It gets really bad, I'd say within the first hour of wearing it. But everywhere else looks really, really good, and it's controlling my oils so well. As you can see right there, I'm normally super oily, and I'm not at all, and I was just sad about my zit. Bye! Alright, so all of these are foundations that do work for my skin tone, but when they're compared next to each other, they obviously all look quite a bit different. So just wanted to note these are all completely dried down, and we're going to start here with the Fenty foundation. This is in the shade 130. Next to that is the Makeup Forever HD foundation in the shade 120 equals Y245. This previously was my closest shade match in a foundation until the Fenty one came along. It is a little bit darker, but on my face it actually works. Keep in mind this is the underside of my arm. The top of my arm looks like this, so a lot of these match my body a lot better than what they look like they do here. Next over is the Milk Makeup Foundation in the shade Ivory, which I would just like to note that as I was filming this, I realized the Milk Makeup Foundation doesn't say the shade name anywhere on the bottle, which is kind of a huge flaw. So Milk, please put the shade name on the bottle. Thank you. Next over is the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless in the shade 112 Natural Ivory. Over from that, we have the Revlon Color Stay in the shade 180 Sand Beige. This is definitely a summer shade for me. I cannot wear this in the winter time when I'm super pale. And then over from that, lastly, we have the Tarte Rainforest of the Sea foundation in the shade Fair Light Neutral. So actually all of these foundations lean yellow, but when they're sitting next to the Fenty foundation, which is so yellow, a couple of these, especially these two, are looking kind of pink. So you can just see how someone like me who needs a really yellow undertone, even ones that say they're yellow, are still kind of too pink for me usually, which is why I'm in love with the undertone of the Fenty foundation. That is everything. If you still have any questions, if there's anything I missed, please ask me in the comments. Also, let me know your thoughts. If this video was helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, because I'm going to be uploading a lot more videos. The next foundation video review I do is going to be the Wet n Wild Photo Focus. There might be a couple videos in between now and then, but that'll be the next foundation review I do. So yeah, subscribe so you don't miss it, and be nice to each other out there. Bye!